It's amazing. I mean, I would actually claim that the biggest single security improvement over the last 15 years is these more restrictive mobile operating devices. Obviously, we still have problems. The attackers have, in many cases, been forced to move away from technical attacks into human attacks. They are looking for the easiest way in, and if it's too hard to hack your iPad, then they will try to hack you. The biggest surprise for me has probably been the fact how much we've been able to improve security. This is a losing game. We won't be able to fight that. And I've sometimes compared this to the asbestos problem. And of course, today we're just looking at how on earth were our fathers and grandfathers putting asbestos everywhere. And our grandchildren will be looking at us and how on earth, how stupid were these people putting all these devices online everywhere.
Everyone, David Bombal coming to you from Black Hat with a very, very special guest. Mikko, great to meet you in person.
Well, great to see you indeed. I was worried if David is real, but clearly you're real.
I thought you were AI.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Deepfake.
So, Mikko, you're very, very well known. You just gave a keynote yesterday, and I believe you just accomplished a major goal of yours.
Yes, that's right. It's really great. I did the keynote talk here at Black Hat, and I remember early in my career, 20 years ago, I set a goal for myself to speak in all three. That's Black Hat, DEF CON, and RSA, and I accomplished that fairly quickly. So then I set up a new goal. I want to do the keynote talk in all three, Black Hat, DEF CON, RSA. I did the DEF CON keynote 11, 12 years ago. I did the RSA keynote 4 years ago, and yesterday I did the Black Hat keynote, so I've reached my goals.
I love that. I want to thank Proton for sponsoring this video. In 2025, you cannot reuse your passwords. You need to use a unique password on every website that you use, every application that you use. We see data breaches every day. As you can see on Have I Been Pwned, billions of passwords have been leaked on the internet. If you're reusing passwords, they're going to be hacked and leaked on the dark web. So you need to use a unique password on every single website. You as a human are not going to remember 20 character or 30 character passwords, unique passwords for every single website. You need to use a password manager, and I highly recommend that you start using Proton Pass today. If you haven't got a password manager or you want a privacy-focused open source password manager, and this is really important, a password manager that hasn't suffered a data breach, unlike some of the others out there. Proton Pass is a privacy-first password manager from the team behind Proton Mail and Proton VPN. Highly recommended. Fantastic organization. They are focused on privacy and they encrypt everything. Not just your passwords, but your logins, your cards, and your notes, so that sensitive data stays protected. This is really important because, as we've seen in the past with other password managers, they were storing some of the data in clear text. You need to use a password manager that encrypts everything. Proton Pass generates strong, unique passwords and autofills them for you on websites, which also helps protect against phishing and keyloggers. You get cross-device sync on iOS, Android, Windows, macOS, Linux, and the web, plus offline access on desktop when you're not connected. Proton Pass also has built-in 2FA, which means your one-time codes appear right within Proton Pass. Another great thing is that you can move towards passwordless solutions using passkeys, and you can even share those links with people who don't use Proton Pass. Again, Proton is a community-funded rather than venture capital-funded organization. They're based in Switzerland, really important because they're privacy-focused, and their solution starts at $1.99 a month. You can get Proton Pass today for 60% off using my link, proton.me/David Bombal, and get started using a fantastic password manager today. You know, it's so cool that you, we're going to talk about it in a moment, your recent pivot, but, you know, it's so nice to see that you've been in the game a long time. You've seen a lot of stuff, but you keep getting a new challenge and going for new challenges. So perhaps you could just give us like a quick rundown. Like I'm pity I don't see your floppy disk with you today, but you know, can you give us like an idea of a bit of history, and then we want to give people some advice towards the end of this talk?
I started in cybersecurity in 1991, and in 1991 the problem looked very, very different from today. So I've been fighting all these floppy-based viruses written by teenage boys for fun. And I've seen all the big shifts, the shift from happy hackers into money-making botnets, into banking Trojans, into ransomware. I remember finding the very first case that we attributed to a government around 2003. The Chinese started hacking Western companies for espionage and spying purposes. I remember working with the I Love You worm, with Stuxnet, all these historic cases, all the way to where we are today. And if somebody would have told me 34 years ago in the beginning of my career that, eventually you won't be fighting teenage boys, you'll be fighting organized cybercrime gangs and foreign intelligence agencies and foreign militaries, all of that would have sounded like science fiction. That's how much the industry has changed. And all those years, 34 years now, I've been working with the same company. So I never switched companies, and it's given me a unique viewpoint, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else.
But like at the time of this recording, I think it's only a few days, right? And about a week or so, then you're switching.
This is my last week. After 34 years, I am switching jobs, which is scary because the last time I resigned from a job, I was 19 years old.
That's amazing. So you got to tell us, that's quite a change. You're going from cyber to something to do with drones, I believe.
That's right. I'm joining a company called Sensor Fusion, which is a drone defense company.
Okay.
So I'm joining a military contractor. Even that would have been incredible just 5 years ago. But the world has changed. And if you look at the warfare today, if you look at Ukraine, if you look at what's happening, it looks completely different from any of the wars we've seen before. And that's because of UAVs and drones. Not just flying drones, but ground drones and marine drones as well. And I live in Helsinki. I've lived in Finland all my life. I live 2 hours away from the Russian border. So I see it as some kind of a duty for myself to use some of the skills I've learned over these years in cyber defense and apply them to drone defense. Because there are similarities. If you think about what we're doing in cyber, we're fighting programmable threats.
Yeah.
Threats that are trying to avoid detection. And when we are able to detect them, the threats change. They change behavior. They try to avoid detection. And then we have to update our systems to detect those. So it's escalation. It's been escalation for decades. And that's exactly the same thing that's happening with drones. I'll give you an example. The kind of devices that have been used to fight, to detect, locate, and disable flying drones for a couple of years now, they've all been based on radio signals.
Yeah.
Radio frequency analysis, figuring out where the controller is, where the drone is. In battlefield, over the last year, we've seen a very clear shift where the Russians are now using flying drones which have no radio control. Fiber optic, which could be tens of miles long.
Crazy that.
It is insane. They have these really small capsules with tens of miles of really thin fiber optic cable, which means there is no radio signal. How do you detect those? Well, you have to use completely new technologies like visuals and other like anti-drones flying, trying to spot them from the air. And the end game in the drone escalation is pretty awful. Because if you think about what will happen when we have really effective ways of fighting fiber optic control drones, then the obvious next step is to remove the control altogether.
Yeah.
Build drones that don't have a controller.
Like AI-based kind of drones.
Set them loose, find a target, decide what to do with the target, kill the target.
Yeah.
Effectively, killer robots. That's where we're going. It's not happening yet, and the reason why we aren't seeing this escalation yet is pretty simple. If you would have that level of computing power on a drone, you would need a lot of computing power and a big battery, which would make it too heavy for today's drones. So I think this will start first from ground drones, which are just driving around because they don't have any limit on weight. But that's going to happen, and that's going to be a huge shift in mankind's history when we start building robots which will make the kill decision on their own. And I don't see any way of avoiding that. So I've always seen a lot of meaning in my work in cyber. But right now, in the middle of the war in Europe, for me, I think there's more meaning in anti-drone work. So I'm going from antivirus to anti-drone next week.
I mean, you look at all these movies and you see the developments in humanoids, stuff like that. It's a real worry.
Yeah.
And you see it's going to happen, right?
Yeah. I'm not worried about like human looking like robots on the battlefield anytime soon. These are going to be like drones driving around on their own or flying around on their own. But we are changing the landscape of conflict forever with this escalation that's happening right now.
In the last few years, what's like really surprised you? I mean, I can throw out AI, but that's such a buzzword these days. But is that what's really surprised you recently in cyber? And then we can bring it back to drones and stuff.
The biggest surprise for me has probably been the fact how much we've been able to improve security.
Interesting.
I think, hear me out, I think cybersecurity, especially the technical cybersecurity level of our everyday devices, has never been better. And I know what people immediately think when they hear me say this. Like, how can I say that when at the same time we every day read about data breaches and data leaks and ransomware? But if you just step back, if you just look where we are today and where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the typical company was fighting drive-by downloads where users were getting infected with malware simply by browsing the web.
Yeah.
You would go to Google, make a Google search, click on one of the links, and bam, you're infected. Well, that's not a thing anymore.
That's a good point.
We haven't seen that in many years. That was a really big problem, but it was a problem because of lousy browser security with Java and Flash plugins inside your browsers, and browsers themselves having all these vulnerabilities, and operating systems having vulnerabilities. We've improved drastically in all of that. You could say the same thing in many other ways, like the fact that we use more and more of smart devices, iOS, iPad devices, Android devices to do our computing, and these are drastically better in cybersecurity than anything running Windows or Mac OS. It's amazing. I mean, I would actually claim that the biggest single security improvement over the last 15 years is these more restrictive mobile operating devices. Now, obviously, we still have problems, but the attackers have, in many cases, been forced to move away from technical attacks into human attacks. They are looking for the easiest way in, and if it's too hard to hack your iPad, then they will try to hack you, scam you, fool you, phish you, and that's the reason why we still see these attacks.
What's your opinion about AI in cyber? And then we come to robotics, perhaps.
I'm optimistic on the AI side as well.
Are you?
I am.
Because sorry to interrupt, it just feels like the attackers have the advantage at the moment with AI.
I disagree.
Interesting.
I think defenders have the advantage with AI right now.
Why is that?
It's easy to come up with scenarios where AI can do really awful things. Find 0 days and hack into systems and do lateral movement automatically and deploy perfect deep fakes. All of that is possible. Even with today's technology, that's possible. But we aren't actually seeing that in large numbers. What we are seeing in large numbers is defenders using generative AI. I would actually claim that right now in 2025, for once, defenders have an advantage with the new technology against the attackers. Now, this will change. Unfortunately, we will see perfect deepfakes mimicking your CEO and CFO every day. We've only seen a very small handful of these so far. It's surprising how little we've actually seen these cases, considering how low the barriers for entry are right now. And maybe the best example is 0 days.
Yep.
In 2024, we had no 0 days discovered by large language models or AI systems at all. None of them. Right now, I've already lost the count, but it's a couple of dozen. However, out of those couple of dozen 0 days discovered by large language models or Gen AI systems, they've been discovered by Google or Expo or other security companies. We don't know of a single 0 day which would have been discovered by the criminals and used. It's going to happen, but, I think right now we still have the advantage. It's easy to come up with horror scenarios, but most of the stories you read about how you could do awful things with AI are academic studies or studies done by defenders, so they could defend better when these start happening. But for a lot of these scenarios, they actually haven't started yet.
I'm so glad you said that, because, you have the YouTube world, and then you have what you guys are doing in the trenches, actually seeing what's happening. And from the YouTube kind of world, it feels like the attackers have all these advantages. So I'm glad that you've said that.
Yeah. I'll add one caveat, which is consumer scams. The fake Elon Musk pushing a cryptocurrency scam. That's rampant already.
Can you tell us about your Project B and how it will help people get rich right now?
Today we are launching an investment project that is working right now. If you see this video, absolutely everyone can earn in it. Everything is very simple. You invested your money in Bitcoin for TeslaTreebot.net is our bot, after which everyone who invested their cryptocurrency will be able to receive exactly 30% of dividends every day from the invested amount.
How long will it take for dividends to arrive?
I'm sure that from 3 months.
Is the number of seats unlimited?
Yes, absolutely.
Romance scams with automatic large language models targeting consumers again. That's already a big problem. But when you look at from the corporate's point of view, from cybersecurity for enterprises, there's a lot of potential threat, but fairly little actual threat right now.
Okay, so AI in cyber at the moment, defenders are doing well. Now let's go back to like the drone situation. It feels like, and again, just stuff that you hear in the news, and maybe it's sensationalist. AI in humanoids, AI in drones. The world's going to be destroyed by like the Terminator nonsense again.
No. Don't go into Terminator. That's movies.
Exactly.
I'm not worried about that at all. I think every single technological revolution we've seen, starting from electricity, every single one of these brings us benefits and problems. At the very least, it brings us the fact that we are now very dependent on those technologies, like we're very dependent on electricity today. I mean, we couldn't feed 8 billion people on this planet without electricity. And you could look at every major revolution, technical revolution, like, connectivity with internet, mobility with mobile phones, the revolution of social media, and now the revolution of Gen AI. Every single one of those will bring us benefits and problems, and no matter how much we'd love to get just the benefits without the problems, we won't. But with AI, the potential for both the benefits and the problems are bigger than ever before. If we get this revolution right, it will solve our problems. If we get it wrong, it's going to be pretty bad.
So you think there's a big upside to AI, and you're positive on AI?
I am an optimist. After everything I've done, after seeing all the ways you can misuse technology, I remain an optimist.
Got to ask you the question. This book, when did you write it?
Oh, that's 4 years ago now.
So just recently in the UK, they've introduced some, I would say laws that I'm not happy about, some privacy affecting laws, let's put it that way. In your book, you say privacy is dead. And that's before, I don't know if you knew what was coming, but like now it's been enacted. In the UK, it's law. It's in Australia. It looks like it might come to the US, might come to Norway. I'm not sure about Finland and other countries, but it's like privacy is under attack, man. It seems like in a bigger way than ever.
Yeah, and it's been under attack over and over again. And it's largely because of the ignorance of technology from the decision makers and politicians. There's very few politicians in any country that I know of where you would have coders and engineers among the politicians. It's actually very rare to find someone who would understand technology at a deeper level among the legislators. And that's the problem, because they see technologies which enable bad people to do bad things, like encryption. And then they want to ban it or somehow restrict privacy in other ways. And the problem is that they don't understand that when an invention has been invented, there is no way to uninvent it.
That is a good point.
The best thing you can do is that you can make it illegal. And if they would make using encryption illegal or using privacy-preserving technologies illegal, then I wouldn't do it and you wouldn't do it because we are law-abiding citizens. But criminals still would. And that's the problem. You can't make this technology disappear. Strong encryption, you can walk into any library and lend a book which will explain to you how to implement it. We cannot make it go away. So if we make it illegal, then only criminals have privacy, and we won't.
One of the things that I found amazing in your book is you were talking about the fact that at the moment, like a washing machine or a fridge or whatever connects to the Wi-Fi network if you allow it. But you were talking about like chips, like 5G is going to go into the dishwasher or whatever, and then you can't stop it, right?
Right. Yeah. There's no way from you preventing the things you buy from going online. You don't need to let them go online. They don't need your help. They don't need you to open up your Wi-Fi for them. They have built-in chips and they will go online. You won't even know that they're online. And there's nothing we can do to prevent this because data is money. Data is money. In the age of AI, data is more money than ever before. And that's why all of these manufacturers, they want to know where this dishwasher is, who's using it, how are they using it, what kind of problems are there, diagnostics, and they can use that for advertisement. There's a lot of dishwashers sold in this part of the city, but here we could sell more. Let's advertise here. It's valuable information, and you can mine that for teaching large language models and other kind of things. So yeah, data is money.
So you think that's coming closer now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's happening right now.
So you will not be able to stop your devices going online unless you put them in a Faraday cage or something.
Yeah, and you won't want to do that either. It's this is a losing game. We won't be able to fight that. And I've sometimes compared this to the asbestos problem. In the 1950s, 60s, 70s, we were using asbestos everywhere because it was such a great material for insulation until we discovered that it's lethal. And of course, today we're just looking at how on earth were our fathers and grandfathers putting asbestos everywhere. And our grandchildren will be looking at us and how on earth, how stupid were these people putting all these devices online everywhere. It's internet asbestos all over again.
Like I think about cars are connected, everything is going to be connected, and it's a privacy nightmare, but you also think from a cybersecurity point of view, it's just crazy, right?
Yeah, well, if it's smart, it's vulnerable. That's why I put it as the title of my book. When we add functionality and connectivity into everyday devices, they become smart, but then they also become hackable. And that's a very pessimistic law, but it's also true.
Yeah, unfortunately. Is there anything that we can do to get any kind of privacy in 2025 and moving forward? Any suggestions? Or
you can preserve your privacy, but most of us don't want to live that life. We want to use these technologies to help our everyday lives. I love having GPT in my pocket. I love that I can just pick it up and speak to it in Finnish, and it will understand perfectly what I'm saying and answer complicated questions or just, spar about ideas. I would hate to be able to lose that technology, but when I'm using that, it's a trade-off. I'm clearly losing privacy every time I do that. Yet, I choose to do it.
That is a good point. So you either go and be a hermit or you just accept it.
Yep.
I want to talk about your experience talking to, say, your younger self or to someone who's starting. What would you advise? So if you were speaking to your younger self, what would you advise?
My advice to anybody, old or young, is that don't just drift. Decide where you're going. Decide what you want to do. Decide where you want to be in the future. In 5 years, in 10 years, I want to do that. Set a goal for yourself. And then you just walk and work towards that goal. And you'll reach your goals if you have them. If you don't have goals, you'll just go wherever people are like pointing you towards. And then you're not making the calls in your own life. Decide what you want to do and do that.
Mikko, thanks so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.